second that he hasn't contributed to, I'm sure he has, as evidenced by the fact that he is the one of that group that has made it through to this top 8 position after defeating another member of that practice group, Mitsuhide, a defending DreamHack champion in the previous round.
Yeah, he got very, very far in WESG, which is like the big open that everybody could enter as well. He won the Swedish part, he won the European part, got through to the finals there. That was with Orange again. Orange shouted him out for that tournament, which Orange also went through in, but also Fluffy in these DreamHacks. Before this tournament, he had 27 wins, 18 losses. That's 60%, and had never made a top 16.
Okay.
That means he just consistently missed out by not much at all. This time around, he went, I think, 8-2. He's already won his top 16, showing what he can do.
I do just want to quickly snap back to the mulligans here, because this is where revealed deck lists come into play. Big change from the single elimination bracket from the Swiss portion is that the single elim bracket has revealed deck lists. Everyone deck lists are made public to compensate for the fact that some players will have shown more information by being on stream than others. That means Fluffy knew he was playing against a secret mage here, and he kept that innovate, which, if you're playing against a freeze mage or a Gunter mage, is actually much, much more important for the Jade Druid to find a ramp like Wild Growth or Jade Blossom, and then even card draw, like Nourish is almost a better keep than the Innovate in your opening hand, just to start pushing through. But because he knows this is a heavy tempo-based matchup, he keeps that Innovate just to max out on tempo, fight these aggressive starts that the secret mage can have.
Yeah, that's a lot of players did bring strategies that involved the deck list being closed, just take their chance in the top 16. But you know, this playtest group do not do those sort of things. Interestingly as well, Fluffy earlier, just finish up the roundup a little bit. He was saying to me that Miracle Rogue has been his best deck by a mile. And we're going sort of to that playtest group again. Orange hates Miracle Rogue. He doesn't think it's very good. Fluffy was saying, oh, I think Miracle Rogue 60. I played over 100 games with against everything, and the only deck I'm not beating is Mage, at least 60%.
Pirate Warrior?
He said everything. He did then correct himself and say, well, except Mage, and maybe he didn't correct himself and say except Pirate Warrior as well, but that's what he was saying.
Interesting. I mean, my views on Rogue are very biased by A, the fact I play a lot of Miracle Rogue myself, and B, two of my teammates are, you know, Casey and Crane, who are both big believers in the deck, and Miracle Rogue specialists tend to be very biased. So I even go as far as saying Miracle Rogue is maybe even 50-50 against Aggro Druid, but Pirate Warrior...
Yeah, he may have had an oversight. It was a quick conversation before he went out there today, so maybe it's something he just didn't name them all. But he's very happy with how it's performed.
Going back to the Secret Mage thing for a second, though, and to the revealed deck list that you were talking about, I think Secret Mage, by its very nature, is a hidden deck list deck.
The name tells you what it is.
Yeah, it's a deck where you want to conceal information from your opponent. So when your secret package isn't just laid out there on a piece of paper with a handy deck code that you can use to net deck it straight away. Thank you, Blizzard. Wonderful innovation.
Nice.
It's much easier to make your opponent sequence badly around these secrets that you're going to have, whereas Fluffy here has full information as to what Hariseldon's secret makeup is.
Interesting that Harry was more than comfortable to play Mirror Entity going into turn, or the 4-mana turn for Fluffy. Perhaps realizing it would have coined out Jade Spirit the turn before, because Jade Spirit is one of those cards that just, there it is, does not go well into Mirror.
Well, if you think about
for the secret mage,
right? If you think about the total level of tempo swing that you get here, he can either play a 0-mana mirror entity here, and yeah, sure, he might get a smaller minion like a Jade Spirit, but if he has to pay full price for that mirror entity later on, like the net tempo that you gain by waiting for a bigger minion just isn't even as big because you're playing it for 0 mana here.
The reason I want to bring that discussion up is because maybe 12 months ago, this deck was just dominating Druids because Druids didn't have anything to play into that mirror entity. Everything. If it cost 4, you actually got a 4-mana minion, not two 2-mana minions. Right.
If you had some zombie chows in your deck, if you played those on turn 1,
GG.
Sorry, buddy. You got nothing to break that mirror entity with anymore.
And something we're seeing everybody doing, or everybody who's playing well doing against Secret Mage, is if they have the coin, it doesn't get used very early a lot of the time. It gets played into counter spells for the large part. That's like the modern day equivalent of that zombie chow.
It's actually quite a big win for Hariseldon because he did play that mirror entity that we talked about, and Fluffy, in response to it, which we should break down, the secrets in the deck are 2 counter spells and 2 mirror entities. We can see that in the list that he has. We have published in front of us. So Fluffy would know it's a 50-50 shot there, that it's either counterspell or mirror entity. He definitely didn't want to get his Nourish counterspell, so he just threw out the coin to try and break the counterspell. But because it wasn't the counterspell, that then means that that coin has gone down the drain, and counterspell will now pick up actual value later in the game.
Interesting to me as well, going back to those secrets, that Secret Mage has gone full circle now. It started off with no ice blocks. Then everybody went, why aren't we playing an ice block in here? Buy just one extra turn late in the game. We're a tempo deck. That extra turn and a tempo deck can just force us over the finishing line. And now we're back to, it's just a waste of a card. We don't need it again.
Well, I think there's still a lot of builds of this deck around. You know, the slower builds, the builds that play Archmage Antonidas, Pyroblast, like those throw an ice block in there because Antonidas and Pyroblast are a way to really, really effectively use that extra turn that you get. This is a very, very low curve list. Tops out at 2 Firelands portals and those 2 Cabal Crystal runners, which aren't even the top of the curve because you end up playing them for 2 or 0 mana a lot of the time.
It's actually a theme throughout Harry's decks, I noticed. He's cut Yogg from his Jade Druid, he's cut any dragons from his Paladin. He doesn't seem to like expensive cards. The whole deck is just themed. Even if they're not aggro decks, they are themed to be able to cast the spells.
Sure.
Crystal Runner. This card is amazing. I'm surprised it doesn't see more play until recently. Like 4 mana 5/5 is basically what it is on most curves. You do have to draw that secret, but the funny thing is I think it's better as a 4 mana 5/5 a lot of the time than a 2 mana 5/5 3 turns later.
Yeah, I can get down with that. It's actually hard to fill out your curve with this deck a lot of the time later on. Arcane Intellect is kind of the only real way that you have to keep your resources high, along with Primordial Glyph, but that isn't a net gain in resources. So it's very rare when you get to the 8, 9, 10 mana turns, especially when you're playing as lower curve deck as Hariseldon is, that you actually benefit from a 0 mana 5/5, right? It could have cost 6 still a lot of the time, and it would still be just as effective.
Dealing with a 5/5 on turn 4 as well for the opponent often takes multiple cards, or if you hit in the face and wait, and then on turn 6 it's quite often just, I've got a card now that deals with this, or a board that deals with it. He is doing okay with his tempo war. Getting that Pyrus back is going to be interesting to see when he drops that back down.
It's like a Mirror Entity 5/5 and ping turn to me.
Yeah, this is the sort of turn when a 0 mana 5/5 is actually quite good. Going back to that, there are just times when it's still early enough and going to be tempo enough that it is fantastic. And this is one of those times, I feel.
Pyros Molten Reflection is a ton of value at some point in the game, though, but he would have almost liked to hit the Molten Reflection on the 2 mana form, just because it would the cheapest way to activate the combo, whereas now this is getting a little bit clunky.
Yeah, this was the deck that Fluffy was scared of as well. This is the deck he didn't want to run into too well. He's going to run into it. This is the deck that he thought could be the one that changes the match around. I know that playtest group did play variants on secrety mages to take down Druid in particular.
Okay.
Because it was the class, the Druid was the thing that everyone was scared of, and so everybody was trying to find a way to deal with it, and they didn't want to just always ban Druid. And so this is the deck that a lot of people brought to give Druid a hard time.
Hariseldon going to break a fundamental rule of Hearthstone here in terms of mana efficiency. He could have just gone with the Firelands to really just max out on his the efficiency of his curve. But he's going into Fluffy's turn 8. So by doing it this way, if a Primordial Drake comes down, he can actually tempo through the Primordial Drake in the same turn, right? If it hits the board, it knocks the 6/6 down to a 6/4, you trade through, you Firelands portal the 4/8, and you're back in a position where you're a minion ahead. Whereas if you do that the other way around, it doesn't quite work.
Also gives this minion the time to either kill Fluffy or die and then get played again on turn 10.
Yeah.
If he plays it a bit later, that may not happen. It may be on turn 11, getting that 10/10 down a turn earlier in a lot of scenarios here too. And Fluffy's hand just not doing anything to deal with it anyway.
Pyrus would be so much better if its third form was an 8 mana 8/8.
Sure.
Just going to throw that out there. Because it's very rare that you actually want to spend 10 mana on playing a 10/10.
And 8 is usually the magic number
in any game of Hearthstone. Right, then you can go 8 ping, 8 frostbolt, 8 primordial glyph. Yeah. Like, there's so many new avenues that would open up. I think that's a very real reason why it's actually been nerfed a little by being bigger, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, anything that costs 9 or 10. 9's kind of the number where they've gone, well, we just don't want you to do anything else. We don't want it to be a 10 drop because it's not a spectacular card. All the 9 drops are odd because of that. Call of the Wild's a really good example. You nerf it from 8 to 9, but it's actually a huger nerf than it looks.
I think you can have huger.
I'm going with it anyway.
All right.
I don't usually obey the rules of language. Like, you have 26 letters in your alphabet, I have 25, it's fine.
Primordial Drake is a wall in this position, but it's not having any significant impact on the game right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that's having a significant impact is the fact there's two 6/6s that are actually better than Jades when they die.
I mean, I set this up, right? The Molten Reflection was just so much value in this position alongside the Pyros. He just needed to find time to be able to activate it on the slower form, on the 6/6. So, having done that, the fact that he now has two 10/10s to drop and his Mirror Entity just nails a Jade Behemoth, this is looking like game over for Hariseldon, or for Fluffy,
Yeah,
sorry.
for Fluffy.
Hariseldon picking up the win.
Hariseldon, one of the players I know very little about, and if you Google him, you just find the character from the Foundation trilogy. But that's relevant to Hearthstone in its own right, because I'll tell you about the character after this. This is basically over, this game, I feel. Just about
Harry?
that character from that. Okay.
Harry, pretty sure you have lethal here, friend.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's why I was talk stoning it. I just assumed you'd seen this. Yeah.
Pretty sure. 6 goes into the 7, ping it down, and then you have 10, 13, and a Firelands portal connecting to face for 18.
Good. I want to carry on my Hariseldon story in a moment.
Oh.
But I'll give it just a minute. Let's watch this take place.
All right. All right, he sees it. He finds the line.
Yeah,
lethal is usually the line.
Yeah, it's also the line you quite often look for last. Because you're quite often thinking, how do I control the board? How do I do this? I'm playing a tempo deck. And then you just go, oh, he's on that score. I can kill him.
I feel like when you're playing Secret Mage, you're looking for lethal pretty often,
Sure.
especially when you have two 6/6s on the board and a Firelands portal in your hand. But maybe Hariseldon was just double-checking everything. Obviously, this is quite possibly the biggest game of Hearthstone he's ever played, so nothing wrong with just double-checking all the lines, making sure your Basic Edition does check out. Casters prove on a daily basis that Basic Edition is very, very hard, even when you are 31 or 63.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me triple his age, right?
Yes. Checks
How
out.
numbers. So, Hariseldon, we're just going to have a moment here. Hariseldon's character basically is a guy who invents psychohistory, which is a way to predict how everybody's going to act using probability. Might be helping him in this tournament.
That's the origin of his
That's
name.
actually the name. That's the name. That's the
Interesting.
character in the book where Hariseldon comes from.
Huh.
So he invents the whole of psychohistory, which is the stuff which helps the galactic people just look after the world.
It's cute.
And so he's based it on a probability thing. And I mean, if I could predict history, I would play Hearthstone tournaments.
So, Secret Mage is now set up to do very well in the series. I think we'll probably have to see the Taunt Warrior come out from Fluffy at this point. The problem with that is that exposing his Taunt Warrior this early actually leaves holes in his lineups against the remainder of the decks coming out, because Taunt Warrior will come out as a counter here, and then Jade Druid will come out as the counter to that from Harry, and then suddenly the Pirate Warrior runs wild. The Pirate Warrior comes out in the series after the Taunt Warrior has already gone down, which is dream world for Hariseldon. The matchup that will be left, though, depending on exactly whether Fluffy's confidence was erroneous or not, the matchup, if that series develops like that, the matchup will be left to play is Pirate Warrior versus Miracle Rogue.
I'd like to rewind you a little bit there, though.
Go for it.
To the counter, which it is. I'm not arguing this, but Druid versus Taunt Warrior. That's closing. That is no longer the walkover it was. We've seen players. There are players in the world that I would back as the Warrior against nearly any Jade Druid player. There are just players like that. Kalento seems to have a good master of that. Anyway, enough talk, Stone. You guys want to see what's going on. Let's get back into the action for game number 2.
Should be hitting the Mulligan stream. I believe it is the Taunt Warrior that's coming out. And yes, it is. It really was Fluffy's only choice in this position. He didn't want to queue up his Miracle Rogue into the aggressive, burn-heavy Secret Mage. And again, little bit of skepticism about Fluffy's claims that he's favored over 100 games versus every deck, because Secret Mage is tricky.
He did say Mage.
You're right.
Apart from maybe Mage.
Yes, you're right.
But we've still got that Warrior matchup maybe.
I want to see it. I want to see it happen. It's nowhere near as it used to be. It's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. Sorry, like in the previous expansion, the tools that Rogue have been given, just all of the extra, Swashbuckler and those kind of effects, hallucination even. Warrior cards are actually quite good at blocking Pirate Warrior lethals in a lot of spots. So you can find that one extra turn that way. And now with the combination of the counterfeit coins tempoing out SI7s and Edwins, and the fact you have Razor Petal Lasher now just to contest the early board a little bit better, you do have some game as the Miracle Rogue, but I still think it's a pretty rough matchup. But before we get to that, I'm going to see if the series is going to develop in the way I predicted, which is Taunt Warrior. Even if it does win this matchup, where it's not heavily favored, if it does win this matchup, it then has to run into a Jade Druid from Hariseldon, which, as you quite rightly said, Warrior players are developing some technology for defeating that matchup now, but I would still bet my life on the Jade Druid if it came down to it.
Yeah, so again, as long as Kalento's not on that warrior, I think he's nailed that matchup. I've just not seen him lose that matchup against anyone other than fantastic players.
I would still take any given tournament pro Jade Druid player over Kalento. I think
right, let's get it on. Let's get it set up. Anyway, so Fluffy, going back to the Rogue as well, he's very one of these players who knows exactly how to. He's played Miracle Rogue a long time. You're saying it's a big thing. I want to see that match, but first of all, he's got to win this one. So like having the counter deck, but you've actually got to play them through. And this Secret Mage isn't just something that has appeared. This is a deck that is really good in this particular meta, just for how it pans out with those Jade Druids being so hard to stop.
Yeah, I think people finding a way to deal with Jade Druid was a recurring theme that we saw over and over again. Some people have gone to Miracle Rogue. Some people have gone to very aggressive lineups. They've gone Aggro Druid, Evolve Shaman, Murloc Paladin, and gone that way. And Hariseldon and a few others that we've seen have gone Secret Mage as well. They're all viable answers to Jade Druid, which is why maybe this Quest Rogue nerf isn't the worst thing in the world, because everyone would just suddenly, as soon as they saw it, everyone went, well, hang on, now Jade Druid's just the best deck in the game. Well, if you can come up with 3 different strategies for how to counter it in tournament, then it's probably not that bad, right?
Yeah, I think people rapidly work out how to counter a new meta, and that's what makes it so fascinating. The good thing with this, with any mage deck, is it's pretty good against token shaman too. The reason that Jade Druid is such a nightmare in this format is everyone's saying, well, why don't you ban it if it's so good? Well, then you don't ban the Paladin or the Token Shaman, which are also exceptionally good decks that you just want to ban out of there. So, actually having secrets is a good thing.
Point of order, I confess, I miss it. The quest icon isn't on the screen right now. Did Fluffy mulligan away his quest, or does he have it in play?
I was letting you carry me.
Fair enough. We'll wait to get confirmation. All right, the quest was mulliganed away, so that's a talking point as well, because again, it's a revealed deck list thing, right? Like, he really feels like he wants Fiery War Axe, he wants Slam and Execute early on, he wants to make sure the board doesn't snowball, but in this particular matchup, a strategy developed that I'm actually a big fan of, where you hold the quest, you don't play it on turn 1, and you just bust a counterspell with it when the counterspell comes down.
So you just treat it as like coin.
Right, because Slam, Execute, Sleep with the Fishes, Brawl, these are all more important cards to you in this matchup than the counterspell, than the quest, sorry. So a little bit interesting that Fluffy chose to chuck it, but we'll see how it works out for him.
Yeah, the quest mechanic's been interesting like that. Like we've talked about Taunt Warrior a lot anyway, where you throw it away as often as you keep it a lot of the time for matchups, which is why some people then try not to play it and realize they just can't win the mirror. But yeah, actually using it to keep it and just not use it correctly, well, not use it how it was intended.
It's cute, right?
I like it. Do you know who first did that? I mean, there were people who said I was the first, but the first person to popularize it.
First time I saw it was in HGG, and I can't remember who was casting, but you know, they're trying to work out, was that deliberate? Like, did they know, like, did they just get their quest counted on purpose? Did they forget to play around counterspell? And then they were interviewed afterwards, said, was that a deliberate thing? And the answer was yes, we believe that's the correct thing to do in the matchup.
That's awesome. I'd probably cast it.
Like I said, when you're 63, you can be forgiven for having 1 or 2 memory lapses.
Yeah, when I'm 64, though, will you still need me, Soul?
I don't need you now, mate.
All right. 2-7 coming down. One of the things with this Ali Armorsmith is you don't want to play it as your first 5-drop a lot of the time in this match. You want to try and sneak it down so it does some damage and doesn't get fireballed. I find you try and sneak it down there. It's not going to happen. Fireball's going to happen. It's going to gain 2 armor, at least, but I often like to hold it back as long as possible. There's just no other alternative this time around.
Yeah, and importantly, Hariseldon was able to continue tempoing, even though almost his whole turn was Fireball in that position.
Right.
The fact there is a Mana Worm being established means that Fireball actually has upside beyond just removing the minion, and he continues to develop his ball presence.
Yeah, going back to getting the quest counted again, just going back to the more basic level for the people who don't watch a huge amount. The reason you don't care about your quest is you need your hero power as armor up for most of this matchup.
Yep.
You get very low on health when you do stabilize, if you do stabilize, and so you just can't afford to even change your quest with the Sulfuras, even if you get it completed.
And again, it's a further nod to the fact this is a very aggressive secret mage list, very, very low curve. So suddenly, kill them all becomes a viable strategy, right? Just exhaust every single threat your opponent has and stay alive. If he was coming up against a secret mage or a more hybrid mage that had Archmage Antonidas, had a Pyroblast, had a Medivh, whatever it is, then suddenly you probably need a win condition of your own as the warrior to be able to stop yourself even getting outvalued in the late game.
What's interesting about what you just said there is that's taken hundreds of thousands of games for people to be fairly sure about.
Still, no one agrees.
And still
no one agrees.
You know, people still throw away the quest knowing they're up against a slower deck sometimes just because they still try and kill them all.
Yeah.
So Hariseldon's hand, I mean, we call it secret. He doesn't know what his hand is himself at this point with double glyph in his hand. Trying to wait as long as possible before playing those glyphs, get as much information as possible about how his hand's going to pan out, so he gets to choose the best thing from the glyph. But the thing is, the Kirin tool with a 1-mana secret's basically not doing anything on turn 7 a lot of the time.
Yeah, the fact that he still has, you know, fairly expensive cards with Fireball in his hand, he still has Firelands portals and things like that to draw, means that he is able to curve out pretty effectively.
We've beaten this drum pretty hard in this game, but revealed deck lists.
Yep.
Just going to play Hariseldon against the mage deck.
Yep.
No Medivh.
Yep.
Off you go, son. Get your 5/4 down.
And that is the wrong secret for Hariseldon to be drawing. He has 2 mirror entities left in his deck, so very unlucky to be hitting the counterspell there instead, because he still has a counterspell up in play right now, meaning that is a completely dead draw for the time being.
Yeah, people sometimes split it 3 secrets wide, like maybe play 1 block, maybe play 1 spellbender, that sort of stuff, just to make sure that they've just got that diversity.
I think we've seen 1 mana bind in this tournament
We
as
have,
well at one point.
That does turn up from time to time. It's really good when your opponent's not expecting it, but when it's revealed, it turns to be pretty rubbish.
Ding! We'll take that guy.
You sound like Raven. Sorry, you look like Raven as well, but that's not so bad.
All right, Eloise.
Don't even know how to respond to that. I know what you mean, I just don't know how to respond to it.
Potion and Polymorph was actually a pretty good roll off the book, though, because it gives him something to do with this Kirin Tor Mage this turn, at least. And now, having picked up that Pyroblast off the Primordial Glyph, 3 out of 31 to get that specific card, then he has now set up a burn plan where fireballing the Harrison Jones doesn't seem that appealing anymore, right? Like, he's just going to try and sink some damage and just back up this Pyroblast with the Fireball. Still has Firelands portals left in his deck. Good chance minions continue to do a little bit of chip damage, because the next taunt that gets played is likely getting Potion of Polymorphed. So he's just setting up a straight damage plan for himself. Oh dear, Fluffy.
Well, this is why playing around truly random secrets is so difficult, because there's no strategy behind it. It's just been given to the guy. He's put it down because he's playing a secret deck. It has synergy, and you just go through them and say, do I test for everything and just waste time?
Yep.
Or do I just say it's a 1 in 6, 1 in 7 and just get on with it and hope it's not Potion of Polymorph or Mirror Entity?
That is a hand with a plan, Lorinda.
I can see this plan. It's a plan of hot and cold.
It is.
It's a plan of fire and ice.
Song of Fire and Ice?
It's a plan of fire and ice this time around. But it could be a song of fire and ice.
Can you sing as a Song of Fire and Ice?
Go. Hey, I'm in on the memes for once.
Arcane Missiles does 2 to face right now. I mean, that 2 to face is actually kind of what you need, right? Like, you hit the sheep, you hit face for 2, you ping face, that's the 18. That means he can then only armor up to 20 and then 22 over the 2 incremental turns that you have. And you have 10 plus 6 plus 3 plus 3 in hand, which makes 22. Hariseldon goes the other way, goes to Arcane Intellect, which on average turns into more damage anyway because of the remainder of his deck being Fireball, Firelands Portal, etc. Both of those very, very viable lines. The Arcane Missiles leapt out to me, but I have no dispute with the Arcane Intellect line.
Pretty sure that it's not going to matter too much. Just want to point out there is 1 shield blocking Fluffy's deck, so he could be on 5 more than we're looking at.
Good call.
It's a thing that could slow it down, although maybe not. Maybe not. There's just so much damage. I'm going to realise as well that the hero power nearly cancels out the frostbolts when we're counting. It's going to take time for those to be
that's what I counted. When the Arcane Missiles come down, there's 2 more turns that you need to cast all your stuff, and there's 2 armors that go in to take him from 18 to 22, and 22 was the exact total of damage that he had over the 2 turns.
I just didn't give you enough credit for realising you could press that button.
I mean, it's tough. Knowing what warrior hero power does. Whew.
It's only been around for a little while.
Yeah.
It usually gains you 4, so I just wondered, you know. Right, so it's just a time where you sit there and you go, how does it go wrong if I push this all into the face? Double check, triple check, you have 75 seconds, you're the biggest game of your life.
Start sinking spells to the mush.
And obviously, Fluffy now also knows where the game is. And he knows where it's likely to be at anyway from what's been going on the board. But
right.
This is now the telltale, okay, I'm probably dead in the next couple of turns. Now his strategy has to become never miss a hero power and kill the guy as quickly as possible from 29. At least you know there's no ice block.
2 more turns needed. The armor up is going to come down, which means 14, and Pyroblast Frostbolt is the only possibility here for 13. So 2 more turns will be required.
Oh.
2 more turns for Fluffy to find that shield block.
So Fluffy there considered playing Sleep the Fishes first to see what the secret was for some reason. I think he knows what it is.
He knows, yeah.
Yeah.
He's considering how much mana he wants to access next turn.
Yeah.
Right? So whether he needs to throw away and deal with that counterspell first in case he draws shield block, right? Like how much mana do I need available to myself to be able to freely cast that shield block on the following turn?
But because he's on a I've got to kill you plan, he's got to just get all the attack down, including the dirty bag. It's just 2 more attack at this point. He's not doing it for the taunt. He's not doing it for the quest. He's doing it to hit them for 2.
Shield block will only take Fluffy to 10 here in this position. Shield block armor up will take him from 3 to 10. Fireball Frostbolt ping is going to come out from Hariseldon. I think he's got this one locked up from this position.
And the meme happens. We have to point out, if you lose your counter deck in last hero standing, bad things tend to happen to you.
Particularly when, as I said, coming into this, even if he won this matchup, he was in a bad position based on the following counters.
So Fluffy needs to get the rogue through this and then make true on his word that it's really good. If he loses the rogue versus the mage, which seems rather likely, then we'll let him off. But if he wins that game and then loses one of the next 2, we're not going to tell him off.
Nicely done from Hariseldon. There was definitely some divergent paths on the Arcane Missiles turn, but after you informed me that there is a shield block in the deck, his plan made a lot more sense. He got himself so much overkill in terms of damage here, and you can see, even if the shield block was there, his sequencing beat it perfectly. 10 would be the number that he had to beat with the shield block. 10 was the number of damage that he had remaining in hand. Beautifully sequenced by Hariseldon there at the end. And these, again, the unknown players, the underdogs, continuing to make the run through this. Fluffy is in probably a quite unique position for him of being one of the most well-known, most well-accomplished players in the tournament remaining.
Yeah, it's him or Turner, I think, going into this top 8 to be, I want to be polite to the other guys, but Fluffy and Turner are the 2 guys that most people have heard of. There's a few others that others will have heard of. There's usually somebody that I should have heard of and haven't. That happens sometimes as a caster, but Fluffy is one of the 2 big names left. And of course, another Swede in the tournament with Orange winning last time. The Swedish hopes would be on this.
And DreamHack Valencia has always been kind of the story of the underdog, right? Evangelion kind of coming out of nowhere to be the big hometown hero was incredible. And again, look at that flag next to Hariseldon's name right now. We could have the story running it all the way back again. The home Valencia crowd could have something to cheer for. I always want to try and pronounce Valencia properly with like the Spanish accent where they had that little lisp on their C's.
I should go for it.
You should actually be pretty good at that, yeah. You want to give that a go?
No.
Valencia. I don't know.
You just end up saying like you've just got an even worse speech impediment than me when you go with that.
Yeah, it just turns into like a TH.
Yeah.
That's clearly not wrong. I don't know. I don't have the talent to naturally lisp as well as you do.
Cheers, buddy. All right. So Fluffy just going to generate tempo like rogues do and try and out-tempo the tempo mage. The problem is that even if he does that, the tempo mage can just flatten the face and there's no healing. Fluffy does have a nice, good, cheap hand, though.
Yeah, I was just about to say, this hand is actually pretty dreamy from the Miracle Rogue side. Shaku is actually a surprisingly good minion against aggro decks. Like, aggro decks these days don't really slam you in the face for 9 or 10 on turn 2 or 3.
Right.
So you have the time to develop a slower stealth minion so that you can then leverage an attack on your turn on the following turn.
And the card is relevant a lot of the time, especially against mage, that has a lot of game-changing cards you can pull out.
Yeah. I like this preemptive attack as well. He doesn't necessarily think that he's going to dagger on the following turn, so he wants to make sure that 1 damage is on the 2/3, so he's not forced to play Fan of Knives or dagger on the following turn. This way, he gives himself maximum options to deal with other minions that come down, like a Kirin Tor Mage, a Mana Worm alongside a Primordial Glyph, like whatever the 3-mana curve play is.
pointing out that Fluffy, I mean, this is no surprise to anyone, but he is playing giants in this deck. So with this sort of opening hand with just naught drops everywhere, those giants can become relevant very quickly.
It's not really a giants matchup though. It can come into play later in the game.
I was only on about this specific hand.
Like, sure, but like the fact. I mean, let me think about how I want to phrase this. If you get to the point where you've used this hand to control the board state and you've then lived long enough to draw your giants and play them for 0 mana, the important part of this matchup is the first half of that sentence.
Sure.
You've used your hand to relinquish the pressure and buy yourself time. Like, it doesn't matter whether your draw is then Auctioneer, Sherazin, like whatever you have to establish a board state. So the Arcane Giants costing 0, not too likely to make a huge impact, but maybe a swingy giant for 4 or 5 mana.
Yeah, or Swingy Edwin. Swingy Edwin,
Swingy Edwin, we'll take those all day long.
Swingy Auctioneer is also an option, and there it is. It's going to be a bit slow if it goes to that, but with this particular hand, it's one of those hands that Rogue players complain about when they don't get their Auctioneer, if it goes that long, which it should do with that Ice Barrier in hand.
Yeah, the Ice Barrier might come in a little bit clutch here. And Shaku is not doing a great amount of work at the moment because of the mirror image roll from Hariseldon off the Babbling Book. And we know how powerful, from various PTSD moments throughout the Hearthstone meta, how powerful Mana Worm mirror image is, and how that can really just put a crimp on your style.
I just like the phrasing of that. It just gives me the giggles. Yeah, this deck, even though people say, well, why doesn't he just burn him out? It can't usually burn out without doing some attacks to face.
Yep.
It's built to get even 15 point, maybe even 18 points of minion damage for the most part. You don't rely on those pyroblasts coming from the glyphs. So yeah, that barrier is going to buy Fluffy some time, but he needs some time. He has managed to slowly but surely drift behind on this board. He needs to get to that Auctioneer turn.
There's a giant, already down to 8. He could have coin gianted that turn.
Interesting. That would have been interesting in the extreme, but he's obviously going for the Auctioneer.
Yeah, I don't think it was right. I just wanted to point out that it was mechanically possible. It also meant that he didn't deal with the mirror image 0/1 because he didn't have that source of damage to kill it.
Right. This is where Tempo Mage does sometimes suffer. This exact style of hand where you're waiting 2 turns to fire lands and you don't really want to fireball face because you're not quite sure what's coming at you next, like there might be an Auctioneer in a moment or two.
Yep.
And you're not quite sure what to do and you just want to spend your mana. And this has given Fluffy, that really weak turn has given Fluffy this opportunity.
Uh-oh. Okay, he knows now, right? There was potential Huge Edwin was going to come out this turn, but the fact that he plays a spell, nothing happens. We don't play Huge Edwin because now we know it's Mirror Entity.
Yes.
You know what the secret makeup is in the deck.
And he has no real good way of playing around it, which is really weird for this deck.
Yeah, like at this point, like maybe it turns out being Auctioneer, Mirror Entity, the Auctioneer, and hope of your 2 coins you draw away to kill the Auctioneer on the other side of the board.
Eviscerate would be nice, thank you.
Yeah, right.
And likely as well. You've got your natural card draw going into the turn, 2 coins.
Still 2 preps.
You can draw redraws. But he's going to need to because
Tempo is pushing now.
Yeah, last turn wasn't so hot. This turn is making a massive difference.
That counterspell that he's just been given, though, is actually kind of nice. It means 3 mana will have to be allocated to use this Mirror Entity to break the counterspell, because there's no way he can sacrifice burn damage with the Fireball or Firelands portal to that counterspell.
The other thing is, well, that giving your opponent an Auctioneer when you can actually counter the first thing they do is nowhere near as problematic.
Sure.
Plus, it's 0 mana into his own Auctioneer, which is obviously fantastic.
Interesting. This is a little bit passive, I think. Maybe it's going to end up being good enough here just to go with the 2/2 Edwin. He is slowing himself down significantly, though. Another turn with just no development from Fluffy. Didn't take his Auctioneer turn, even with those 3 0-mana spells in his hand already.
Yeah, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that Fluffy's played a lot of Rogue, not just in this meta, but in all metas. It's a deck he's been very fond of. He knows how to do... You know, a lot of people know how to do Auctioneer turns, but he's one of those guys who sequences them spectacularly well when you see him do it under pressure. I've seen him do it many times.
Just face. Chuck it at the face. Firelands portal the face.
That's what it's there for. And back into the situation. Oh, no, it's not as fantastic as I first thought it was, but it's still big enough.
Halluce. Halluci could end up being juicy for Fluffy in this position. He needs a huge auctioneer turn, and Hallucination is something that can help him along. As I mentioned, I believe still 2 preparations left in the deck, so the possibilities for him to do something absolutely insane this turn while developing maybe even double Arcane Giant in the same turn, but he just goes Hallucination straight away, gets paid out big with the Meteor pull as well, allowing this board clear.
Definitely one of the meteor things he could have pulled out of that, and it's just going to buy him another turn or two. And he's not far off go time. It could end up being really close here.
This glyph could be everything. As Fireball in hand, that's 6. 2 on board, that's 8. The ping is 9. So he's looking for 7 damage or 6 damage plus ping from the Primordial Glyph, which is
How unlikely is that?
It's unlikely. I will confirm for you exactly how unlikely it is in a second once my Google Docs loads.
Goodness me. I thought you had it all up in your head. I thought it all just came straight from the head, the heart, and some sort of processing machine, but
19%. There is just the Fireball and the Pyroblast that will get him the job done, not including the slight possibility of greater arcane missiles getting the job done.
And other things, yeah, and also other things that will get him the job done in 2 turns, which will be enough here, because even if a load of giants come down, you just kill them the turn after.
Nope.
And that is the 1 in 4-ish whiff rate that you quite often mention.
It is, yes.
Where it's just complete and utter garbage. Like, it couldn't be more garbagey, really.
Definitely unlucky to get no damage at all. You're 43% to be offered some form of face damage from Primordial Glyph. So, yeah, sure, 57% of the time you don't, but you want that 43% to come down on the right side of the matchups for you. And when you're playing the most important matchup of your Hearthstone career to this point, you want to be hitting that 43.
And there's other good cards, there's mirror entities, those sort of things would also have helped him out.
Arcane Intellect, Kabbalist Tome.
So, yeah,
all things that I'm not factoring into that raw number.
Yeah.
Sometimes stats lie to you, friends.
That's just not true.
It definitely is now.
I've never lied to anybody with stats. All right, it's go time. Just working out where he wants to be. And where he wants to be is putting those giants on the board and giving them charge. Unfortunately, only half of that is possible.
Give Arcane Giants charge. New balance change coming in Wrath of the Lich King.
I mean, that'd be good hero power for Rogue. 2 mana, give minion charge. Pew, pew, pew.
I can't actually think of anything less likely than that to happen.
No, nor can I.
No. The Arcane Giants do come down here for 0. Backstab is still a playable threat here for Fluffy to keep on going. He's just considering his outs, whether the Blood Mage needs to come down here to get the extra damage off the backstab. If he, for example, Blood Mage backstabs and chains Prep into Fan of Knives, he can then take out the 5/5 with the combination of those two. But you're dealing in very small percentages of chain draws to get a more effective clear versus higher percentages of getting some kind of clear.
And it's looking grim. He has managed to develop this huge board. We saw yesterday a huge board in similar fashion with a 2020 Edwin played that then lost to just damage off the top. But just not there.
Counterspell in play. Which means he is just a little bit off. Didn't take a cheap enough spell off the Primordial Glyph to be able to proc this and Fireball and Ping. Not calling that a mistake by any sense. Although, actually thinking about it, the counterspell is there because of Mana Bind. So actually, maybe that is a mistake.
So that is a definite
That is actually not hidden information.
Yes, so it is a mistake.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Harry.
I think he should slow down. And you don't want to flame strike trade to prevent you from dying.
You really don't want to do that.
Just because that 5 damage that's going to the face is so crucial right here.
You just flame strike, go face, right?
Yeah.
Like, what else can you do? He needs 8 to kill you. 8 is a lot.
It's a lot, but there's an auctioneer in play.
You saw how awkward the auctioneer turn got at the end of Fluffy's previous turn, though, is the problem.
So you know he's out of spells or close to it.
Oh, this is passive.
This can now go wrong because Fluffy might now have extra turns. Hallucination.
He looks unsure. He's looking around. It's almost as if he's trying to seek approval for the line of play that he just took. I don't think he's going to find it here. Don't agree with it.
Slowly happened through this match as well. Harry was all sort of happy and cheer at the start. He's the underdog. He's not expected to beat Fluffy. No one knows who he is. He's 2-0 up. Now he's expected to beat Fluffy, and suddenly that happy demeanour has turned into one of intense concentration. Well, that's been happening even when he was winning this game. He was starting to feel it a little bit. It's like, I'm no longer the underdog. The pressure is now actually firmly upon me. And this is now head in hand time, because he realises he should have played around that counter spell with the glyph. It's dawning on him what he could have done differently.
It's dawning on him that he probably should have jammed face on the previous turn. 8 is a big number. Yes, it's 2 eviscerates, but there's probably no cold bloods in the deck, so it's 2 eviscerates purely. There is, in fact, no cold bloods in the deck. So it's... I don't know.
Looking at the faces, which one of these guys is 2-0 up?
Right. And that's the point. That's the point I really wanted to go on to make, is this could actually be a major turning point in the series. We know how confident Fluffy is with his rogue. You've told us about that multiple times. And at this point, Hariseldon, this could be a real tilter for him. This could be now a high-pressure situation, getting on top of him, and he can't find his way through.
And now you're having to Frostbolt a giant? That Frostbolt doesn't like giants, it likes faces.
I like your face.
Oh, no. It's the age that does it.
The what? Oh, age. Right. Got you.
Yeah, don't get them going, Sottle. Goodness me. All right. So, when I've just recovered, thank you.
Mimic Pod.
Notice also how Fluffy has approached these last couple of turns. He's been able to play Auctioneer into Hallucination, he's been able to play Auctioneer into Mimic Pod.
Yep.
That's not going to get it done necessarily. The extra card in particular, he's looking for other things to do.
Glyph into Pyro, I believe. Is there even one glyph left? Because I think that's where we are.
Oh, or...
Nope.
Well...
There's no one card, right? Oh, Greater Arcane Missiles, all 3 connecting. That would do the job.
Yep. Cone of Cold.
Not going to happen. No way to prevent. Hariseldon, this was your moment. Have you let it all slip past? Fluffy now has a window back into this series. There is still the Pirate Warrior to come from Hariseldon, so let's not count our chickens before they're hatched just yet. But hey, if he lets this game get mentally on top of him, Fluffy, who you have set up as a very confident Miracle Rogue player.
Hey, he set himself up as a confident. I'm just relaying the information.
Semantics.
Don't semantics me, son.
But Fluffy is a very confident Miracle Rogue player. That is something we can agree on. Regardless of who is relaying that information, he is now a player that has grown in confidence after coming back from a very unfavorable position in that one matchup. He's playing a deck that he likes, a deck that he trusts, a deck that he says is favored over 100 games versus every class that isn't mage, the one that he's already just beaten.
So first off, he's probably just going to have to... Oh! Yeah, Harry's just going for it. I don't think this is a wise choice. I don't think it normally matters.
Are you talking about just leading out with the Pirate Warrior, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel that if you just tilted yourself a little bit...
No, I actually, in the frame of mind that we're theorizing these players are in right now, and let's importantly use the word theorizing.
Yeah, of course, because we don't know.
I do not want to play another frustrating game of Jade Druid against Miracle Rogue where I can't really do anything and their Vile Spine Slayers and cards are just way too effective against my stuff. I feel like mentally that would just tilt me even more. I just want to get the Pirate Warrior out there.
Interesting how different people perceive that. I want to get on with it. I want to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to play this deck and just calm down. I'm probably going to lose, get myself prepared so I play the last game really well. Because it's not the last game, but this is kind of the last game of this series.
Yep.
Anyway, he's gone with this. This is the frame of mind he is feeling he's in. That's the important thing. And he is slowing himself down, which is a good thing. But you can see that he's obviously disturbed by that loss. I mean, who wouldn't be? But his job, whether a professional player or a player who's just entered the tournament to enjoy himself, either way, his job is to calm down and do his best. It's sometimes easier said than done with the world talking about you.
And this is not a good Pirate Warrior start, by any means. No weapon. Things that are dying for weapon synergy. Played a deckhand on 1, drew a second deckhand, neither of which are going to charge. Fluffy's going to take the board on turn 2 as Miracle Rogue.
Yeah. That's awkward if you are the pirate. That Malkarok looks like a thing that might matter at some point as well. Could come down to needing to get something off that on turn 7.
I'm okay with Malkarok showing up now because my #1 tilting effect that casters used to do that used to really trigger me, where they would just pretend that every time you played a Malkarok, you were going to get Curse Blade.
That's what happens, even now.
Even now, when it's impossible.
Well, now I know that it gets you going, I'm just going to use it every time anyway.
Yeah.
So, captain on his own. No patches, nothing on board, just a 3-3. Is that the right ordering? Would you have gone for the cultist first?
I think now drawing Reaper, he has a plan.
Okay.
Right, which is Reaper, then he goes Deckhand Cultist, then that's 11, then that's Heroic Strike. There's he's almost just painting by numbers here in terms of how that one Arcanite Reaper lines up into lethal at this point.
And obviously Fluffy's got the dream here, not so much his own start, which is just fairly standard, but Fluffy's plan is to realise what's going on, but how does he develop his board? Do you just go wide here so you can deal with everything, or do you actually have to start fighting back quickly?
You want a tempo swing, and that Valspine that he just picked up, I want to question his play on the previous turn. He went Blood Mage Backstab instead of Backstab SI to kill the 3-3,
right,
which left an SI7 agent kind of stranded in his hand and developed less power on the board. He developed a 1-1 instead of a 3-3, and he left a SI7 agent without a good combo activator left in his hand, apart from the coin, but the coin didn't have a curve play. There was no coin SI plus something on the following turn. So a little bit questionable from my perspective, but he did get bailed out by that Valspine Slayer pickup, which was the perfect draw to then go along with that coin. And now with Backstab #2, we're back in SI7 territory. He's got a great combo activator again.
Playing devil's advocate on that one just a little bit. His hand was quite poor at the time. You don't want to spend a whole turn playing Mimic Pod. And
well,
so,
I mean, you can.
So getting down a Blood Mage, which is a 1-1, is going to do something, and still using it efficiently, does give you an easy card draw.
I would perhaps debate that the getting a 3-3 ahead of the play on board with the SI7 agent then finds you the turn that you need to cast Mimic Pod.
That's very important.
And then
point.
you then have a Blood Mage still in your hand to leverage removal with.
Yep, I think I agree with you. It's just probably what was going through his mind is get the card that way.
Armor could be relevant here. This actually might end up being a race. That 2 health that you gain here instead of jamming the 10 from Heroic Strike could end up finding you that 1 extra turn to draw 1 extra card to deal significant amounts of damage. And I think Harry is coming to the same conclusion. Yeah,
and he's actually in a fairly decent spot with all the damage in hand. He can't play any of the cards, but Fluffy is going to have to take care of this board. And that's always awkward.
He needs a random effect. He needs Hallucination or Swashbuckler. If he plays Auctioneer, he needs counterfeit coins before he can play Swashbuckler. He needs preps before he can play Hallucination. Now, even if he hits Shield Block, he needs another prep to be able to play the Shield Block. He knows this is all coming through. 2 weapons and a Grom is not what he's looking for. That, I believe, is all of Fluffy's outs exhausted, even from this Auctioneer turn, and the Heroic Strike is going to be sunk. Hariseldon has just managed to hold on with, from my perspective, the very favorable matchup with the Pirate Warrior just being enough to get him over the line after that. Pretty tragic Secret Mage game.
Yeah, watching Harry's face there whilst that hallucination was in progress, all he saw was every single card in the whole of his own deck that could kill himself.
Yeah.
And then the second that Fluffy did nothing, Harry takes it down, and 3-1, laying the foundation for another Spanish winner.
Yeah, it would be a phenomenal story. Raven, you were here with me last year when Evangelion came out of nowhere. Not a name anyone was really familiar with outside of the anime, maybe. But as a Hearthstone player, not a name that people really knew or believed.